Thank you for your interest to XM Cloud. My name is Martin Miles, and in the next couple of tens of minutes, I promise you will learn something new about this wonderful platform. Sitecore came up to the market with a quite unique DXP, featuring many of the new products, including XM Cloud, which we'll be talking about. But first of all, what does it stand for? Here's how Gartner defines DXP. A digital experience platform is an integrated set of core technologies that support composition, management, delivery, and optimization of contextualized digital experiences. Web development itself took 3 decades for evolution from a static development to the mature world of DXP. Speaking about Sitecore, it made a long way from CMS, later having OMS DMS capabilities, to modern DXP with decoupling, containers, managed cloud, edge, you name it, and eventually SaaS. Today we are going to talk exactly about that, Sitecore SaaS implementation, also known as XM Cloud. Alright, so what is XM Cloud? XM Cloud is Sitecore's flagship product. It is heart of composable DXP with a fully managed self-service deployment platform. It is enterprise CMS in first place. It is cloud native. It has Jamstack capabilities. Every XM Cloud comes with Experience Edge included, as well as personalization and real-time analytics. With XM Cloud, you don't need platform upgrades anymore. Platform upgrades are known as an uncomfortable nuance for your creative content and development teams, which is inexpensive in both time and money. So no more upgrades for the whole life of your websites. Since XM Cloud features headless architecture, it allows you making quick and easy changes without cumbersome process. Speaking about staffing, there is no more bottleneck caused by a small decreasing pool of legacy CMS experts. Any good front-end developer can do this type of work for you. Headless architecture offers much faster development process for you. There is a live coding connected mode where you can see immediately changes as soon as you type them. From the cost of ownership perspective, XM Cloud offers reduction of the operational costs. XM Cloud is subscription-based and you only pay for what is used. You will need less DevOps or site reliability engineers if you need them at all. Cloud Portal comes with a numerous set of applications, and I will name only a few of them. Sites is a tool that allows you to easily manage multi-site and multi-language deployments. If you ever played with Horizon in XP10.2, you will immediately recognize the user interface of Pages app. I want to highlight that Pages was done with attention to minor details. It has very pleasant animation effects for many transitions, leaving you with a premium experience feelings. And there is no save button anywhere in a Pages application, since it automatically saves your changes. It also has support for multiple websites selected from a drop-down. Extensibility framework for Pages will be sometime later to cover your advanced scenarios. And I want to share some fun fact. Pages, being a separate cloud application, still uses Experience Editor engine within iframes under the hood, making it possible rendering and editing custom field types. The purpose of Components application is to enable content creators and marketers to see and create components without the need of developer from scratch. There are lots of styling options to specify custom types and custom fonts. Here we create the components and publish it so that component becomes available in components library of the Pages application. The intention is for us to be able to put components together and create them together from basic page elements, such as images, links, and so forth. Starting with a grid, you simply keep adding columns, set alignments, and apply other UI-related things. But the most impressive feature of component application is that we not only create and customize components, but now we create entire components completely from scratch. And we hydrate them with data from external third-party data sources, even other headless CMSs with zero code. The key feature of SaaS offering is that you don't need to upgrade your system. It's done for you automatically. You can only identify new changes by seeing log records in your update app or occasionally from spotting out a newer version that is in place. It's important to mention that Sitecore uses semantic versioning for XMCloud. Sitecore differs two types of releases, updates and upgrades. Update releases include new features and bug fixes. These are non-breaking for customer XM implementation. These could be automatically deployed to customer projects by Sitecore, and releases may occur frequently. Upgrade releases include also new features and bug fixes, but these may introduce changes to your platform that require customer or partner intervention in order to modify customizations. Sitecore will introduce this type of changes as a last resort because it will require a customer to redeploy the new XM release using XMCloud deployment tool when they're ready. Of course, this release is expected to occur infrequently. Before talking about licensing, it's important to understand how the SaaS offering is structured. XMCloud hosting platform includes the concept of organizations, projects, environments, so that each XMCloud license comes with amount of each. You may have specific environments, and your account manager will provide your license covering your bespoke needs. An organization in these terms is the equivalent of an XMCloud subscription. The default sandbox has 2 projects and 3 environments per each project, which are 1 production and 2 non-production, typically for development, staging, testing, or other purposes. Coming back to the licensing model, it is similar to a subscription license, and its cost model was simplified very much to be based on traffic and consumption. For local containerized development, you must possess a valid license file, and the one you have from your partner works pretty well with it. Unfortunately, nothing on Earth is ideal, and especially on its early days. XMCloud comes with some limitations yet, mostly caused by architectural changes, and team is working hard on fitting them into a composable world. So, for example, there is no support for headless forms, and I know there is some work going in progress to make it as a composable offering that works nicely with XMCloud, but this yet to come. Media library has a limitation of 50 megabytes per item, which would be served via Edge. Search is not an option any longer in terms of custom indexes for your websites, for client websites. Of course, there is a search powering your CM instance, but it's reserved for internal purposes. XMCloud comes as a single region, which means you have to choose between 5 geographical regions upon the provision. And this should not be confused with your site's distribution, because if you deploy to Vercel, it uses geographically distributed HCDN on its own. And Sitecore Experience Edge is also a geographically distributed CDN. So it only relates to your CM instance, which you should place somewhere close to where your editors sit. XMCloud also does not work nicely for protected websites, or also known like login fence, where you need to enter credentials to log in content that is not available without prompting that. It's doable, of course. You have to implement your security permissions by yourself at your head application, but it's not coming out of the box or part of SDK. There's also no custom module packages possible at this time. And if you want to create and provide your own module for CM so that they are compatible with XMCloud, please first make sure it fits to the architecture, and then consider shipping those modules as NuGet packages. Let's talk about XMCloud architecture in details. XMCloud is basically your CM instance running in cloud. It has Experience Edge for content delivery, Frontend-as-a-Service editing tools, which we know, sites, pages, components. It also has Deploy App, which allows you making deployments from a nice graphical user interface. It comes with Headless SXA that is powered by Sitecore Next.js SDK and has integration with the Content Hub, DM, and SMP, which is coming out of the box, and it's also included in the base images. And as I previously mentioned, this is single region covering 5 regions so far, so it may be not the best fit for specific geographic locations. A headless architecture consists of backend with a layer of services and APIs for a front-end client user-facing application. The front-end application or presentation layer retrieves data from CMS using API endpoints and using that data to populate a hard rate the markup it generates. Without having CD services any longer, there is no place to execute HTTP request pipeline extensions. And Experience Edge provides just a flat, raw published data in a headless way. There's no place to apply any logic. But what if you need to modify a request, for example? In that case, all that logic gets moved to a head application. Webhook's framework is a composable way of implementing an event model between DCS systems. Previously, in monolithic Sitecore, you had to handle events with C# code, which was complicated, it took time, it required a rebuild with application pull recycle. And you obviously cannot do that between external systems, most of them even written with different languages. Instead, these systems communicate events with HTTP calls, also known as webhooks, passing a payload of important information for the event. It also supports authentication. Obviously, it functions asynchronously, works around items, lifecycle events, and also publishing. Rules engine is something that powers your configuration, where you can configure specific conditions around lifecycle of your items. You can also create webhooks manually or using admin REST API. There is a uset. For example, you can set a webhook on publish end to use dynamic page regeneration to reduce the number of calls directly to Edge. Let's talk about Experience Edge in GraphQL. Some people think that you require Edge for GraphQL queries, but what Edge is doing, it placing GraphQL endpoints into a CDN. We do not have content delivery servers any longer. We cannot publish to web database. What we do instead, we publish content to Experience Edge. The important moment is that Edge connector publishes a static snapshot of the layout service output for an item at the time of publishing. Things like language fallbacks are applied at the publish time. There is also no site context or similar runtime abstractions. You cannot adjust GraphQL endpoints with pipelines for extra features because there's no content delivery. Edge requires an Edge token, also known as API key, to serve the content. There is a nice GraphQL IDE to test your queries. Locally in Docker, GraphQL Edge uses endpoint which runs on your CM. So it's not actually Edge. Experience Edge has its own webhooks. Edge CLI is coming for accessing and managing the Edge. Publishing to Edge is a quite expensive operation, so I would recommend you consider batching. Experience Edge has search capabilities, and obviously you can search by exact field value match. You can do equal, not equal operations. You can do contains, not contains. You can filter by the field names in both ways, do pagination. You can do logical AND or operations. There is a common misunderstanding about content published to Experience Edge becoming unprotected. In fact, publishing to Edge is not equal to making content publicly exposed. No one can access your content without providing a valid Edge token, which you typically configure as Sitecore API key parameter for your environment. API key should never get shared publicly by making such calls directly from JavaScript, which is running in a client browser, therefore exposing your secret. And there is a fun fact behind Edge API key. It's actually, if you base 64 decode your API key, you would have a name of your tenant in it. With the XP platform, we used to have identity server. However, the one is no longer useful in genuine composable world. Sitecore has to rethink authentication approach and implemented a new unified identity system so that it offers single sign-on across eligible applications of the composable XP family. Many people ask about integration with their providers. So the good news is that it will support OpenID-based identity providers and therefore Azure AD. SAML providers will be added later. It is also worth mentioning content security. Previously, Sitecore took security settings from the items which were validated at content delivery, but now without content delivery, your content gets published flat to Edge. It is now becomes a duty of your head application to respect these permissions, or not to. Let's look at what we have inherited from XP. We got old good media library, which is now powered by Azure Blob Storage. However, Edge CDN has a limitation of 50 megabytes per media item. You do have workbox and workflows. You have both editors, content, and experience. You do have localization. You can do language fallbacks. Sitecore PowerShell extension is a big thing, and it comes to XM Cloud. However, you need to enable it. Access management tools like users, roles, domains, they are still part of an interface, but you need to implement things like that yourself. Control panel is also coming to XM Cloud, and Sitecore CLI is also with us, which became a much bigger tool than it was before. Sadly or not, but many XDB features become redundant in a new composable architecture. Everything related to XConnect, like XDB, XM of XM, Experience Profile, List Manager, Marketing Automation, they all have to go away. Also, things related to content delivery also is not available with XM Cloud any longer. MVC renderings, forms, non-headless SXA, custom search indexes, publishing service. There are other bits which we also don't find with XM Cloud, like identity server, device detection, TDS, and data exchange framework. All of them will not find their place in a new composable world. XM Cloud doesn't have content delivery service, so HTTP request pipeline extensions running on content delivery are also not supported. If you require changes to HTTP request, then you need to make them on a client app hosting. For example, Vercel fully supports through its serverless functions, so you can implement pretty everything. But I will explain it in a bit later. Because of the same reason, forms are not available, but Sitecore is on its way for building a composable XM Cloud for forms offering. Speaking about search, if customers want to use Sol-based solutions, they could set up, configure, host their own Sol solution standalone. They could send content to it. They can use it from their head application. But of course, that requires an extra effort. And well, still, that's an option. But the most simple solution would be running search-based queries directly from Experience Edge. And you can call them from your head applications. Rendering host is a familiar concept known from headless Sitecore development. But with XM Cloud, we extend terminology with rendering and editing host. XM Cloud has a built-in rendering host that works for GSS-based websites. And because of that, it uses Node.js. For example, it will not work with headless ASP.NET Core renderings. I recently blogged about how to pair XM Cloud with ASP.NET Core renderings so that you have your headless ASP.NET rendering host running on Linux containers and taking data from XM Cloud in a headless way. But in that case, you have to provide it yourself and connect to XM Cloud. It is a good practice to have one rendering host per client side. So normally you would specify it at xmcloud.build.json file, and you can choose between GSS and SXA types, which affect provisioning and scaffolding. Choosing hosting, everyone would name Vercel in first place. But why Vercel? Vercel makes it easy to deploy your Next.js application with minimal configuration or any setup required. It supports serverless functions which can be used to create API endpoints or handle backend logic for your Next.js application. It provides a fast global CDN which ensures that your Next.js application is delivered quickly to users around the world. Vercel can automatically scale your Next.js application to handle spikes in traffic, ensuring that your application remains available and responsive. It provides collaboration tools for developers to work together on Next.js applications, making it easier to manage and deploy complex applications. There is a little bit of confusion in the terminology. Edge functions is not equal to edge middleware, and the main difference is that edge functions run after cache. In the previous version, the middleware was deployed to Vercel as an edge function, but now it's edge middleware. Middleware code executes before a request. Based on the request, you can modify the response. Because it runs before the cache, using middleware as an effective way of providing personalization to statically generated content. Depending on the incoming request, you can execute custom logic, you can rewrite, redirect, you can add headers, and so on. Next, speaking about data fetching strategies. Try not to use server-side renderings, which defeats the whole point of Next.js being a static generator. Use SSG because it's a better option. If you use get server-side call in a single component, then the whole page has to be SSR, and you cannot mix SSG and SSI in the same page. SSG doesn't make your page non-interactive. It makes the markup reach the browser as soon as possible with all the assets it needs, and then the content gets pulled and rendered. There are not many use cases for SSR, and you can do pretty everything with SSG. Next.js fully supports serverless API functions. It just requires a different way of thinking, abstracting from a server-side way of doing things like MVC. Today, it is headless, it is serverless, and Next.js is a full-stack framework. It's not just the front end. Of course, you can use other hosting options. For example, you can benefit from executing Next.js middleware on Netlify, or you can even build your own Jamstack self-done hosting. It's your choice. All right, so how do we do personalization with XM Cloud? A slim version of Sitecore Personalize comes built into Pages interface of XM Cloud to allow basic event personalization. It is a new way of doing out-of-box personalization. We have a limited set of mostly session-based rules, such as day of the week, a visitor's country, operating system, or maybe visitor's current device. However, there is no way you can manage the built-in personalized tenant directly from your XM Cloud interface. If you check it carefully, you can still find some rules which are based on historical data. Example of a history-based rule is the number of page views within the past number of days, but maximum 30 days. Of course, once you enable full Sitecore Personalize, a set of tools will expand and the functionality will be much wider. Unlike XP, where we would personalize each component individually, in XM Cloud, we create page variants to achieve that so that we can define the audience that will be exposed to that page variant. That change comes because of Experience Edge storing your content flat with all the page variants. The actual personalization is happening in the middleware of your Next.js application. If you use the Headless SXA Next.js templates, it comes out of the box for you. Of course, you are not limited to Next.js, and you can use other options, but you would have to implement the personalization logic yourself. Sitecore comes up with the Next.js Personalize add-on, which includes Next.js middleware plugin, React component for page view events, using the Sitecore Engage SDK. Also, a page props factory plugin and other bits such as additional environmental variables. Analyze is another great embedded tool powered by page-level analytics. Pages that are built with page application have embedded tracking tag. Therefore, analytics become automatically available. Just out of the box, it will empower you to see the browser details, operation system, where the users come from, pages like first page, entry page, top page. You can see by visited top countries, by source visits, time of day, etc. Similar to the previous example of Personalize, this analytics system is now built on top of the Sitecore CDP. Previously, all the analytics was taken out from the Sitecore XDB, and without having that in SaaS or cloud offering, the only option for providing built-in analytics and personalization was to rely on CDP and personalize in some way. Okay, now we reach the most interesting section. What would be developer experience working with XM Cloud? For local development, Sitecore provides you with containers running on Windows-based environment, and you need to have a valid license file to run it. Unfortunately, no LTSC 2022 images are supported, so it ships only with LTSC 2019. And yes, we stuck with Hyper-V on client OS like Windows 10 or 11. So once you run it, you may see a list of containers, and it looks pretty similar to what you can find with the classical XM platform. Custom images provided by you will not get supported. This is done for sanity and for safety. You can debug in Visual Studio as you normally do in containerized environment, so that you can attach to specific container and process running in that container. And once done, your breakpoint will hit. You don't have package-based modules like you used to have any longer. Sitecore Connect for Content Hub, CMP and DAM connectors are included in the base images. And I would recommend you taking a look at Sitecore Docker tools, which is a very helpful image that contains lots of things you can reuse. One of the most important containers at this setup is traffic. This one accepts and distributes all external traffic. Traffic ideally fits containerized environments as it relies on the file-based certificates located at the mapped volume folder. One of the most frequent errors occurred with traffic is while it's trying to set up a local container, and you already have a running web server, for example, IIS running port 80443, which prevents it from running. All right, CLI. CLI became a much more important tool with XM Cloud. It is the only dependence of XM Cloud, and it works even on Linux because it's written with .NET Core, and it allows you to control any instance deployed to XM Cloud. You can even install it in a lightweight Azure Functions running on Linux container so that you will run something like CLI as a service. You have to be on CLI version 5 at least or later, and you need to have XM Cloud plugin installed in order to control your cloud instance. CLI can do lots of things for you. It can do authentication in both interactive or non-interactive mode. It could provide environments, do serialization, publish into Edge, live watch, download logs. You can also promote between environments. And important point here is that someone with user level permissions cannot use CLI for cloud operations because that requires admin rights. This is because CLI uses XM Cloud REST API, which users don't have access to. There is only one command of cloud that user can access is Cloud Environment Connect command, which actually uses getID API endpoint for the specific environment to which they do have access to, so that they can connect to that environment, but they can do nothing else. And after that user get connected, they can use the normal non-cloud Sitecore features like index, serialize, populate schema, etc. And you can also use non-interactive login with CLI by using client ID and client secret, which you obtain from automation client in deploy app. And that enables lots of integration scenarios like serialized Sitecore items on demand. And you can combine that with webhooks so that you can do it-yourself backup and version control in your Git repo in no time. XM Cloud starter kits come in the form of one repository storing your head application, platform itself, customization project, your serialization, and a bunch of other useful tools. So let's take a look at what we have there in the repository. So first and foremost, we have environmental file with all our parameters. We do have init script and app script, which you typically can find in any containerized environment. We do have a solution here, and by default, you can have one solution that is located at the root of your mono repository. But if you have more than that, you will need to rely on this file, which is called XM Cloud build.json. And this is a very important file because it basically sets up lots of things. It has your rendering host. You do XDT transform from it. You specify what you want to build. You do post actions. You do have serialization set up from here and lots of other things. You do have classical Docker Compose and Docker Compose override, where you keep all the changes above the Docker Compose. This is for storing XM Cloud version and your CLI. Under Sitecore folder, you have user.json, which has lots of useful information after you log into your cloud environment, like client ID, etc., authority as access token. So this will get used by the system. You do have Docker folder where you have your Docker files in the build. You do have a mapped volumes here, especially this one for traffic, which has self-signed certificates files, and it also has a config for referencing those and other bits, of course. Then obviously you have the deploy platform, deploying actually your platform into that folder, maps that in all these customizations into your containers. Deployment logs are here. Tools is something I created for this particular mono repository. We'll take a look at them later. Source folder, we have serialization. We do have our head application, and we do have platform. So what platform is? Platform basically is like your old .NET framework application, which you used to run in containers before. But of course, because we don't have embassy renderings, we don't have all the bits, we mostly use that for deploying our config and customizations. Like, for example, I'm having this ZZZ config, which will get deployed into corresponding folder, and it will get merged onto XM Cloud instance and run as normal. I want to show you this. And this will pick up the value, host value from environmental setup. So you have to set up this in your deploy app. And basically, this is the reason why you need to redeploy every time you change or modify environmental variable, because these get applied at the build time. I want to actually demonstrate one customization. So I took the content editor JavaScript file and I applied something to the end of it. So I applied these two functions so that I have expander and collapser. There will be two buttons applied to my content editor, which are quite helpful. and I deploy them. Let me show you how it works. I think that's it for the file structure. I listed all the important files and all the important folders here on the slide. There are two ways of deployment. You can do that with XM Cloud Deploy app, or you can do by CLI. XM Cloud comes with an integrated deploy app that performs exactly what it is called for. It deploys your solution using existing source code to XM Cloud from a friendly graphical user interface as an alternative to using CLI. And currently it supports only GitHub to connect with XM Cloud, but Azure DevOps is coming soon as well. After providing access to your GitHub account, you configure and choose the branch and specific environment that deploy app deploys from, and if it's production or not. There is also an option to trigger deployment on each commit, so that branch to trigger has automatic deployment every time someone makes a push or pull request into that specific branch. And as I said before, you must possess admin rights in order to perform deployments. Regardless of if you do manual deployment or if you use deploy app, your items get deployed as item resources. This feature has been with us from probably Sitecore 10.1 for a while, and it aims for providing out-of-the-box default items. But of course, it carries out some implications. Once the item resource file is deployed, items from it appear on a content tree. Any changes to such an item creates a record into the database, and now this record from database will serve the data. Database wins principle. It may lead to some unpleasant collisions, like when modifying SXA site settings and details. Another thing to mind is with item resources, you cannot delete resource items. One can get rid out of them only with redeployment. And that seems to be a little bit inconvenient compared to old good serialization, where you can delete the item locally and push serialization changes to the target. We do have old good PowerShell extension, which comes pre-installed, but you need to enable it setting this environmental variable to allow. And of course, you need to redeploy. There's also PowerShell remoting, and it also works with remote environments. You can do lots of things with PowerShell and PowerShell remoting. You can manage your instance. You can do all the operations on the items, on security. You can do automate things and scenarios. Another thing you can do is you can upload your test configs without need to redeploy, which takes a lot of time. You can do anything else that you would normally do with classical content management. So let's take a look on it with a demo. I already have enabled this PowerShell and PowerShell remoting, so it should run for me as normal. Boom. It's quite interesting use case. What I can do with PowerShell, I want to execute SQL level select against the master database that runs in the cloud. So I do just SQL select on a database level, taking all the items from it. And you see it returns me 4 records. Basically, I have only 4 items in my database. And if you have been watching it carefully, you might guess why, because the rest of the system is shipped with item resources. This is, by the way, expander collapser I talked about through this. You remember these 2 blocks I added at the end of JavaScript file. So this is how it works. That's my customization against my XM Cloud instance. Okay, let's take a look at the remoting. So I have Visual Studio Code, and I write a script for remoting. So we have these parameters. That's my instance. This is the user in the context of which it will get executed. And this is my secret. Basically, the script is this one. So what it does, it gets item fields for the home item. Let's run it. And it perfectly works here. These are title text fields from home item and the rest of standard values. One of the best tools to work with XM Cloud is authoring and management GraphQL API. You can do pretty everything with it for managing content and cloud environment itself by just making GraphQL calls. The API does not currently support subscriptions, but works with queries and mutations. And with it, you can do different interesting things like this fun but functional use case. So you can use classical Sitecore forms, for example, done with 10.3, with XM Cloud by leveraging embeddable framework and injecting a form into a page running on your head application with a custom action that calls authoring GraphQL API to create an item in your XM Cloud master database. Of course, collecting user input in a form of item into a master database is not an ideal way of doing things, but this is just a POC, and that demonstrates how it all works. But we're going to have a different demo today. So first of all, in order to enable GraphQL and Management API, you need to set up environmental variable. It's not enabled out of the box. So I need to set this variable to true and do redeployment. I've done that already. So what I would like to do is I want to upload a media item into this default website folder. And in addition, I want to create a webhook. So that would be a webhook for item edit event. And I configured a condition with rules engine so that if it gets uploaded into this default website folder, then it will trigger a webhook to this address. And this address is a simple webhook catcher. It's called request bin, and there's nothing here so far. But as soon as I upload the media item, it will get triggered. So in order to do that, I created a few scripts. So this is a calling script. So first of all, we obtain JWT. Then with that JWT, we need to get a media upload URL by calling to this endpoint. Once we get these two, we actually upload the media item, passing these two parameters, and output the result. And for each of these three actions, I have a corresponding commandlet. So this is how we get the request token. And actually, you see, I'm using user JSON, which contains my client secret and client ID. So I don't need to input anything manually. Then I get a media upload URL by making REST call. And eventually, I upload the media, passing all these parameters. So let's run it. And see. Okay, the item uploaded. This is new ID. This is the name. This is the path. And what happened is there was a webhook request coming to this address, and we can see the context. There's lots of useful payload with this request coming. So this is webhook item ID that actually triggered. And we also have these item details. This is ID of a newly uploaded item, its name, parent ID, and the whole payload of useful information. And of course, coming back to content editor, opening up this folder, I will see a new item, which is here. Let's talk about development tips and tricks to enhance your productivity. First of all, admin folder tools are there as it was before, and I compared what we have with XMCloud and what we had with platform TAN3. So you can notice new tools which are colored with green. We have cleanup database and we have PowerShell.SPX. PowerShell.SPX is just a shell in the form of web page, but of course you need to enable it first by creating an enabled file under Sitecore/admin folder. What you can do also is you can use your web database as a stash. I know it's not recommended practice, and probably web database will go somewhere, but for the moment I have this selector, and I also do have a control panel which has moved an item to another database tool. So basically I can copy and move all the content which I need, and that will keep all the versions and all the languages. So it's like a stash database where I can back up something and rely on it at the later stages. Not a recommended approach, but I still use it. When it comes to backup and restore your Cloud Run databases, there is no currently a tool which allows you to take snapshots and backups. And I know that development team is actively working on providing you UI where you can do backups and restores of your Cloud Run databases. But if you do want to make it happen currently, what you need to do is you need to sync to your local database, and you do have access to your local database with your SQL Server Management Studio. You can take backup or you can restore to that backup, and then you can basically sync it back to the cloud. Not a convenient way, but still an option. And of course, I've been often asked about migration to XMCloud. So let's talk about that for the two potential scenarios, whether it's existing headless application or if it's MVC-based website. So speaking about headless application, you will need to consider doing at least this list of actions. So first of all, you need to upgrade Sitecore CLI to version 5 on Euro with XMCloud plugin. Then references now look differently. They are sitecore.xmcloud.assembly name. And same applies for NuGet packages, which now have different names and versions. You will need to leverage xmcloud.build.json file, which is now a very much important file located at the root of your mono repository. If you have solution file, you need to place it there. If not, you will need to reference it from xmcloud build.json file. Custom CM Docker files won't get supported, and all customizations done into that Docker files will be simply ignored. Instead, if you want to do customizations, you need to move them into the platform project that gets deployed along with your customizations. Previously, we had old good role-based configuration with different roles like standalone, content management, content delivery, indexing. So now we have only one role, which is XMCloud. So you need to consider this setting as well. You need to remove modules that are now part of base image, namely Sitecore PowerShell extension and SXA. The image naming is also different now, so it's Sitecore-xmcloud-cm with appropriate tag. You need to remove GraphQL customization pipelines if you had it before on your content deliveries, because we now don't have content delivery. And if you had, you need to rewrite your queries correspondingly. You can do migration page by page, so that routing can get changed also as per page by page. But I would recommend you consider using official starter kit for your upgraded solution if that is applicable. When it comes to MVC solution, this is not as straightforward, and we have now two potential routes. So if your MVC solution has very simple presentation and less business logic, what you can do is you can upgrade your existing solution to 10.3 version of platform. If that was XP, then you convert to XM. For XM, you don't need to do anything, but definitely for XP, you need to remove XDB assets. Sitecore Connect can help you migrating from XDB to CDP so that you can keep your data. Then you convert sites to headless. And you will need to follow all the steps from the previous slide, which I demonstrate about headless. In case your solution has lots of custom business logic, I would recommend to leverage vanilla XMCloud Starter Kit and rewrite your UI components to React with JS6. You will also need to refactor business logic to your head application. But in that case, you will also can benefit from top and best SXA features. And of course, you will not leave any technical debt behind of you. SXA has been reconsidered and seriously reworked a lot prior to this upgrade in both 10.3 platforms and XMCloud. XMCloud, being natively headless platform, gets headless subset of SXA just out of the box. It allows developers to build and deploy headless websites using XMCloud, taking advantage of known existing SXA features such as page layout, partial layout, and especially rendering variants. Why would I use SXA? There's lots of features. First of all, it's built in XMCloud out of the box, so there is no any valid reason not to use it if you especially start a new website. It only adds on. It has multi-site capabilities and custom link provider per site. It allows you to share resources such as page design, partial design, pages, all that between headless sites within one site collection. This is actually the new name for a tenant. There is improved SEO, sitemap, robots. It has page branches and layout standard values per site. Site scaffolding is still there. Component library is a little bit thin compared to what it was with MVC, full version of SXA, but it has different purpose. With these components, you're supposed to clone them and refactor, derive your own components from existing one. It, of course, has automation and scripting because it has PowerShell extension underneath. Speaking about UI, it supports grids and styling, and known frameworks such as Bootstrap and Tailwind are supported. So let's take a look what we have still with us and what has gone. So support for experience editor and pages still there with grids and styles, page, partial layouts, rendering variants, page branches is all available with SXA headless. There are new site templates and site cloning. With this version of SXA, there is a good sitemap that allows you lots of configuration, same for robots and redirects. 405 and 500 pages are also available as a feature. And as I mentioned, we have cross-site sharing, which is quite helpful, I would say. There are different things that we don't have in Headless SXA any longer, especially with XMCloud, which is obviously MVC renderings. everything that is search related from previous SXA. These features are no longer with us. We do not have snippets. We do not have SXA theming. Of course, we do not have SXA creative exchange because we don't no longer need it with the headless development. Speaking about sitemap, I want to mention it uses sitemap item crawler, and it actually gets served through Edge as a media item. This is interesting fact. What I can say about mixing, you can host both SXA and non-SXA website within a single Sitecore instance. Development team has done a great work for sharing SXA and non-SXA components and sites. So you can also put a non-SXA site to an SXA site collection, which is tenant. Pages built with SXA can contain non-SXA component, but they obviously won't benefit from SXA features such as grid and styles. But unfortunately, you cannot do the reverse. Now we have site scaffolding and site cloning. SXA has tools for creating the blueprint of the entire site. The starter template from XM Cloud is an example of site template. It has SXA headless components and the rest of assets to scaffold the site. There is also an automation to clone existing sites. Clone makes an exact copy of images, content, and so on. So the derived site operates exactly as original, but just under the different host name. So once run, the derived website will function fully independently. Rendering variants is one of the key concepts of SXA, and that is for reason. Variants allow to reduce amount of renderings with a similar functionality, and the code, of course, improving editing experience. The good news is that rendering variants remain with us, but in a slightly changed way. Previously, with nVelocity or Scribbon, variants had the actual snippets that were merged at content delivery. Now, without content delivery, variance logic moved to your HAT application. And now your renderings are only referenced by name, so comes to rendering variants. So here you can see a promo component that has two exposed variants. One is called default and the second called with text. Each of them represents a rendering variant, so with the previous experience editor can now switch between these two, like we did before. Such an approach allows Next or React developers changing the code without any interaction with the backend developers. And I think that's all from my side. Thank you for watching. I would recommend going to my blog where I share lots of things about XM Cloud. And please take a look at my GitHub where this code base will be shared. Thank you.